Hey everyone, welcome to We the Trust. On this podcast, we talk about the issues that plague the lives of men, from sonship to fatherhood, fitness to finance, emotions to spiritual formation. We push the boundaries that make most men uncomfortable. My name is Mario Casada, a pastor, mindset coach, and brand strategist living in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I am joined by Eric Chang, an entrepreneur, fitness coach, and author living in Arcadia, California. Welcome to Season 2. So, Aaron Larson, good friend from Hawaii. He's a pastor. He is a DJ. He's a podcaster, motivational speaker, recovered addict and alcoholic, and just a really dear friend of mine. I call him one of my extended brothers. We share haircuts and just very handsome heads. Basically, we've noticed that the more bald guys we have on here, it's usually because they have really amazing heads. But thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for joining us for We the Trust this week.
Hey, no, thanks for having me on. I'm always stoked. I mean, this is the first time I've actually seen you.
Yeah, right. It's
weird. Face to face, and I don't even know how long.
I think it was like end of last year. We had breakfast. Was that?
Yes. Yeah. And I think before that, it was at my birthday, my 50th birthday.
Right.
So it's been like 2 times in the last 2 years.
Which is not enough, not nearly enough.
Nope.
So Aaron. Oh, it's going to get confusing. I call Aaron Larson. So I'm just going to call him Larson because it's going to be easier for me not to get tongue tied.
That works for me.
Love it. So, I don't know who was that started at One Love?
So this is the weird thing is wherever I go, it's weird. So where I work now, they actually call me Aaron, and I'm like, it's been like 4 years I've been working at this place, and I'm like, oh, that's me. Okay. Just wherever I go, people always call me Larson. That's it's really like, especially like when I was working with YWAM, all the Samoans and Fijians they wouldn't just call me Larson. They put an S on everything. They're like, hey, Larson's. So it just stuck. So wherever I go,
that sounds about right for some reason. I don't know why that really resonates.
That's funny. So we're gonna be talking about being a husband today, and Larson's got a really unique story that I wanted him to come on and share. And so I'm gonna hand it over to you, Larson, and or Larson's, whatever you want it.
Larson's.
And let's hear a little bit about your whole story, but then let's focus in where you wanted to go today.
Yeah. And so what's really interesting about this is just in being a husband and a father, more on the husband part, is so like, so here we are talking about how to be a better husband, like all the stuff that happened when I came out of my active addiction and got sober in that story. And my wife and I are in the middle of finishing up a really great argument. So, it's one of those, it's just like, I'm not at my finest hour as a husband right now, but in comparison to what I'm going to share, miles and miles away. So it's funny how this stuff works out, right? It's like whenever I do premarital counseling for people, they always come in the office and they just got done arguing in the car and then try to put on a nice face. And it's like, you guys have been arguing, haven't you? There's like, well, so that's the way it goes. And you guys, please, I jump in with, anything as I go. Definitely. But as I'm thinking about this, so I'm gonna start really probably around 2011, 2012, because that's when stuff got gnarly. I was a drug addict, alcoholic, all through my teenage years. When I turned 25, gave my life to Jesus, got saved, and stopped drinking. I think I smoked pot one time after I got saved, and literally like no effect. And the Lord was seriously like this, like, really, Aaron? I'm like, yeah, you know what? This is dumb. And then I was clean for 17 years. Then in 2012, I think I bent over to pick up something on the floor of my house and my back went, nope, it's not happening. And because used to be avid skier, and would not take care of my body. And so I'm starting to feel the effects of it doesn't matter how you land as long as you look good in the air philosophy, right? Which was great in your 20s, not so much in your 50s now. And so this was, so 2012, and I go into the doctor, and what does the doctor do if you've got back pain? So this is before the whole opioid crisis. People were like going, wow, people have a problem with prescription drugs. It was just on the end. And let me just tell you how my addict mind thinks. Okay. This is true. Every time I say that, a little voice in my head goes, man, that was just great. We snuck in right at the end where you could still get as many drugs as you needed to from the doctors. I'm not joking. I was so lucky to hit it before all the restrictions came on. So that just gives you insight into how an addict's brain works. But that's what happened. So I remember sitting in my doctor's office, and they're like, well, we're gonna have to do some scans and some x-rays. But yeah, you definitely are. And I was in legitimate pain. At this point, I was not hustling any doctors. We'll get to that in a moment. But I was in legitimate pain. And so they gave me like 30 of
one question. I'm just gonna ask a clarifying question because you didn't mention it. How many years married are you at this point?
Oh, I am 23 years married. So October will be
today, right?
Yeah. So I'm coming on. So how does this work? So I'm in my 23rd year of marriage. So in October, we will start our 24th year of marriage. So 23 years.
Think of it this way. You're in your 23rd year. On that anniversary, you complete your 23rd year.
The 23rd year. Yes. I will promptly
ask your math daughter about that.
Yes, Kayala will be able to actually help me figure that out. I literally go to her if I have to do basic math. I'm just like, hey, I got to do this for work. Can you check my arithmetic on this to make sure it's right? And that's what she does. She laughs at me. She goes, Dad, and then she's like, laughs at me and gives me the answer. She hasn't gotten to the point now where she knows she could mess with me and give me the wrong answer, and I'd go into the meeting with like the wrong figure. So thank goodness she's not like that.
She's too sweet.
She is. But anyway, so I'm in the doctor's office, and I remember sitting in the doctor's office, and he's like, yeah. And he goes, well, here, he's writing out this prescription. He's like, I'm gonna give you a prescription for Vicodin. And that was like the lowest dose he could give me. And then you need to set up an appointment with some other people to do this. And somewhere in the back of my brain said, yes. Oh, yes, we remember this. This is good. Like seriously, like out of nowhere. And so I remember getting the prescription, walking out of the doctor's office. This is after 17 years clean and sober, and going, all right, this is going to be good, right? End up going and getting it, and just, taking that first pill and going, oh, my body's like, don't you remember this feeling? Don't you remember how awesome this is? And it just washed over me. So what I learned later, talking to I actually have an addiction counselor that I see still about once a month, once every other month, is that opiates or opioids actually affect the same part of your brain that alcohol does. So when I took that pill, it just my brain woke up, and there's all this neuroscience behind it. Won't get into that, but it basically said, yes, we like this. We remember this. We need to do this more. So that was October of 2012. By October of 2013, I was taking about 15 to 20 pills a day. I was also on basically Ritalin, methylphenidate, ADHD medication. I was taking that. So they gave me the highest dose you could take, and I was supposed to take it 3 times a day, or as they say, as needed. So I needed a lot. So it was basically what I call a poor man's speedball. I was taking prescription painkillers and then prescription amphetamines, and basically mixing it together. And so I was taking them orally. I was crushing out my Ritalin and snorting it, doing about 15 to 20 pills a day. By the time I got to October of 2013, I was down to 129 pounds. It was ridiculous. So I was pastoring at a church that Mario was at this time. And how do I say it? It didn't completely affect my marriage or my parenting at this point, right? That came later. But what it did is it really started the ball rolling. And what I realized is that when I gave my life to Christ when I was 25, yes, new creation in Christ, absolutely. All things that were old now become new, but there's still work that we have to do, right? Just like in our marriages or being a parent, if we want something, not just out of a relationship, but if we actually want to deepen that relationship, whether it's with Jesus, whether it's with our wives or our kids, we have to invest in that, right? And what I didn't do is I didn't invest in my relationship with Christ. That's where it went wrong. I just thought, hey, great, I'm not drinking, I'm not doing drugs anymore. Everything is great. I don't have to worry about it. And I got into this place where I didn't deal with all of the trauma and all of the issues that happened to me when I was younger. Just briefly, my mom died in a car accident when I was sick. When I was 6, my dad married my stepmom, who was verbally and physically and emotionally abusive. That lasted until I got out of the house at 18. When I was 18, then my dad died of a massive heart attack. And that's kind of when I really went off the rails with my drug and alcohol addiction back then. Got saved, but I figured, you know what? I'm not going to deal with any of these issues because I'm saved now. I got Jesus. It's great. So that came back really to haunt me, especially when I got back into active addiction, because all of these insecurities, all of this, people don't like me unless I'm doing something for them. Which, let me just say this, as a pastor, you can easily get caught up into that, right? I mean, because part of the role of a pastor is to help people where they're at, right? And so people are calling you, they're coming to you because they have issues that they need to have dealt with. And you're the person that you're going to connect with and kind of walk through it with them. So my value was not who I was in Christ. My value was what I did, and I'll say it this way, for Christ, right? And I remember sitting in my office at this church that I was pastoring at. And
I don't want, Larson, I just want to clarify something real quick, just timeline wise. So you said that you essentially got free from the original stuff that you're using early on was what were the cocktails of choice that you're using?
Okay, so I was drinking like crazy. Jim Beam was my best friend. I was smoking a lot of pot. And then, so this is back in the 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I was taking a lot of speed, but it wasn't like methamphetamines. It wasn't like I wasn't like smoking crack, but it was just like these little speed pills that you would take so you could just drink more, and this kind of balances everything out.
And then fast forward to being when you're in ministry, you're actually actively addicted to Ritalin.
So Ritalin and and painkillers. So
and that's because of the back thing that you
because of the back thing. Yeah. So that's what started it.
And at the time, did that seem like while you were living in this narrative, was that a problem to you? Like, were you conscious that this, or were you like, this was just normal?
See, that's the thing is, because I was getting my job done and because nobody knew or recognized, right? I mean, I went from like 150 some pounds down to 129 pounds. During this time, Corrine got diagnosed with stage 3C breast cancer. So everybody thought it was just the stress and then having to do this stuff. And I'm kind of hyper anyway, so I'm really active. People thought something was off, but I hid it extremely well, right? Because like I said, one of the things that I'm not proud of, but I was really good at, hustling, and I was really good at lying, right? And so as long as I was performing at my job, and at this point, I was present for my wife because she was going through cancer treatment. So I was there with her. I was making sure her family was taken care of. I was producing, right? So from the outside in, everything's fine. Like, he's showing up at work, he's getting stuff done. He's taking care of his wife who's got cancer. He's there for his kids. So everything seemed like it was going well. And that's the thing, is because you can only hold that together for so long. And this doesn't just apply to drug and alcohol addiction. This is for anything. Wherever your life is unmanageable and you're trying to hold it together so you look good on the outside, that's a red flag that you've got an issue, right? It could be being a workaholic. It could be whatever's taking you away from what I would call real life is. And if you're a father and you're a husband, your real life begins first with your relationship with Christ. Second, your relationship with your wife, and then your kids. If those three boxes aren't checked and you are neglecting those three areas of your life for work or for something else, you've got to readjust your value system, right? And I didn't realize I needed to do that until one day, as I'm sitting in my office, the Lord speaks to me, and I'll never forget this. He goes, "So Aaron, what are you doing?" And I'm like, it wasn't an audible voice, just so you know. But it would have been cool if it was. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm working. He's like, "No, what are you doing?" I'm like, I'm pastoring, you know? And he's like, "That's not what I called you to do. That's not what I asked you to do." And I literally did this. I literally took out my business card that said, you know, One Love Ministries, Aaron Larson, associate pastor. I did it. I held it up and I went, "Yeah, that's what you called me to do. I got the business card. This is a conversation I'm having with God, right?" And he goes, "You right now are serving a church. You're not serving me." And I realized that my priorities were out of whack, that I was doing things to perform because I wanted people to like me. I wasn't doing things because of what God did in my life, right? So that was kind of in the midst of that addiction as everything was going downhill. So the last sermon that I preached at this church, I preached while going through opiate withdrawal, which I don't recommend to anybody. It's just really not well. The place that we were at was at a high school. And I remember being on my knees on the stage behind the curtains, literally shaking and sweating right before I had to walk out to preach this sermon. And it was ridiculous. So got it together, walked out. I invited friends who just moved back to the island to watch, got done with the sermon, walked out, and they're all kind of like this. "Yeah, that was interesting, Aaron." I had no clue. I was just so out of it because it's not fun to go through withdrawal. So that was kind of the first indication that maybe I have a problem, right? I had self-detoxed 3 times during that 12-month period from the opiates and the methylphenidate stuff.
During the time that you were, this was a conscious decision to like start getting off.
Yes and no. What would happen was I had 3 doctors that I had kind of on the hook. I had my primary care physician, I had a physical therapist, and then I had a specialist. So what I was able to do because the restrictions weren't in place, is I was able to get a prescription from one doctor. And then as that was getting close to running out, get another one from another doctor. So I had a pretty decent supply as I was going. And then I knew everybody who had a tooth procedure or had some kind of thing that had painkillers. So I would literally just call them up, and they knew I had back problems, and go, "Hey, my back is really hurting. I think I need some." I had a friend who was also on Ritalin for ADHD, and I'm like, and they use it appropriately. So they always had some. I was running out. I'm like, "Hey, I ran out of my medication. I can't get any. Can I have some of yours?" They're like, "Oh yeah, no problem." These are people who went to the church I was pastoring. This is horrible. It was just awful.
But it was all under the guise of, I have this back pain, and this back pain is keeping me from performing and doing as I carrying on my daily duties, like my responsibilities. So I need to do this because it's going to help me do good things. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And is that kind of the internal thing that you're wrestling with? So, because you didn't feel like it was a problem. Like that's kind of what I'm seeing now in the timeline. It's like you didn't feel like it was a problem. And then it got to the point where there's this, like, what are you actually doing? It became this being issue of like, I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, at any point of you going through this addiction, you started to, I'm sure there's recognition of it, right? It's like, there's at some point, like, I'm at a crossroads and, I'm addicted to this. But as you were in the moment of it, was there ever a sense of hiding this thing from God, and then your wife, and then yourself? Like, was it like, I don't know, because the only thing that I really struggle with personally for myself is like food stuff. Like I use the cope,
right?
But I'm like hyper aware of it. Like I'm very aware of it. So I've never had something like this, and I'm curious. Like, is it you actively hiding, or is it subconscious hiding? Like, what does that look? What
it's actively.
What did that look like? Okay.
Yeah, it's actively hiding. Like it was ridiculous. And one of the things that fueled that is my wife believed the best in me. So it was so easy to deceive her, right? Which is awful, right? But it was a conscious effort to make sure that nobody knew how many pills I was taking or what I was doing. If it came up as to like, well, didn't you just get a prescription filled? Making an excuse for it, right? But here's the thing. I was hiding from God because I was not actively pursuing any type of relationship with Jesus. My relationship with Jesus was completely based on what I was doing for him in ministry. That was my work. I'm like, hey, I'm not just showing up for work. Like I'm doing it, other than that sermon, I was knocking it out of the park for the most part. Like it was, things were not falling apart around me, right? Now my relationship with my wife, with Corrine, began to get a little tense there. So when it came to the point where I knew I had to stop, I was going through the withdrawal. Really what forced me to go through to not step back into it really was that I knew that I had at least another 15 days before I could get the pills again from any of my doctors. And so I basically just said, okay, I got to go. I went into a staff meeting. After the staff meeting, I grabbed one of the other pastors and said, hey, listen, I'm in a bad place. I need your help, right? And that began kind of that, what should have been in 2013, the road to recovery, right? So again, I got off the drugs, total horrible move. I had my friend call my wife to tell her, hey, this is the spot that your husband's in. That did not go over well. So Corrine took the kids to a friend's house for the day as I tried to figure out the path that I was going to. Oh, and this is where Mario comes in. He had the wonderful, wonderful experience of having to drive me to Queens Medical Center to see if I needed to detox. So luckily, and I do mean this, luckily I had already detoxed, right? But I had to go through the whole process of going into Queens, getting admitted. They bring you back to this little room. You have to put on the gown. You have to give them all of your little items. They have a security guard. I'm a pastor of a pretty decently sized church, right? This is ridiculous. There's a security guard standing outside the room as a psychiatrist comes in to ask you these questions to see exactly how bad that it is, right? So luckily, because I had detoxed, they couldn't admit me. There's nothing in your system. You seem like you're a sane individual. So this isn't it. And I just, and if I didn't say thank you, then thank you for driving me to detox, Mario. I really appreciate that. But I do remember is the awesome breakfast we had after that. That was amazing down there in Kailua. But my point is this, is that even after I came clean, I still didn't do anything to address the issues that I had in order to not get back into that mindset. And I think that's the biggest point. Like if you have frustrations in your marriage or frustrations as a father, not just frustrations, if you feel like you're failing, you got to stop and ask yourself, what is the disconnect? Like, what is it? And I would almost guarantee that is, if it goes back to what's your relationship with Christ like? Are you spending time investing in your relationship with the Lord? Because if you're not, you've got nothing for your wife. You've got nothing for your kids. That is our source for everything, right? And I still didn't get it. I'm preaching about this on Sundays. I'm having other people come into our church. Like anytime somebody came in drunk, coming down on drugs or on drugs, they're like, hey, Larson, can you go take care of them? I'm like, yeah, sure, right? And here I am in active addiction. I remember 2 or 3 people that I met that I got them into a program and I got them help, right? During this time.
Wow.
Because it was all performance mentality. And my value and worth as a father, as a husband, as a pastor is only if I'm getting praise from my kids, getting praise from my wife, or getting praise from my job. Wow. If I'm not getting it, then I'm doing something wrong. I suck. And the drugs, they help you with that. They help me not care, right? And then by the time the end came around, that really was my mindset, right? So what I had to do is I stepped out of being a pastor and I just needed some time to just kind of get my head together and really get my heart together. Kind of got my head together, did not get my heart together, right? This was kind of the first and small hiccup in my relationship with Corrine. And we worked through some stuff, things got better. So then I thought maybe 6 months after that, I'm like, things are going well, not dealing with any of the issues I have in my life. People are no longer shocked that I was going through this. They never stopped liking me, but in my eyes, I'm like, okay, they like me again. This is okay. I can start drinking. Like I hadn't really been drinking through this whole time, a little bit here and there, but I had ended up drinking, and then that ended by 2014, went from like maybe once or twice a week, went to every single day, went to, at some point, I was literally getting up at about 5:45 in the morning so I could walk down to the gas station, because at 6 o'clock, they serve alcohol. I could actually buy it.
Wow.
I would walk into this gas station. I wouldn't have to say a thing. The teller at the gas station would see me and basically just do this. Put it on the counter. They knew what I was going to drink. They knew what bottle that I wanted. And it was just like, it was a very bizarre, surreal relationship that I had with like 2 or 3 different gas station attendants. So that's when the end really began. So by the end of 2014, I was drinking every single day. This went on from 2014 to 2018 when everything basically hit the fan. So I remember, again, Mario was present for this wonderful, wonderful experience. We went out, we met at a local pub, right? So this was my MO. So I would have a little bottle of Jim Beam. And so I would bring that with me and I would drink it on the way to the pub. I would hide it behind the air conditioning unit outside. I would go in, drink. So then I had something else to drink when I was done drinking at the pub on my way home. So this is how bad it had gotten.
Oh, your tolerance is very high.
Oh yeah, I was drinking a liter of vodka a day by the time everything ended, as well as taking the opiates and still snorting the methylphenidate. And I should have died. I really should have died a couple of times.
Wow.
Mario had the, I won't call it a pleasure of having to bring me home one night. And this is where Kareen realized that there might be a problem, but still wanted to believe the best in me.
Wow.
And all I remember of that night, Mario, is going to the bar, having 2 drinks. I remember talking a little bit, went to the bathroom. After that, everything is a complete blackout. Next thing I know, my wife is literally throwing me into our bathtub because Mario had to carry me pretty much from his car, right? I mean, fill it in. I'm just this is what I vaguely remember. I don't remember anything at the pub. I remember getting to the door, my wife going, "What is going on?" My kids sitting on the couch going like, "What's wrong with Dad?" She brings me into the bathroom. I'm throwing up. And she literally, now my wife is half Korean. She went 100% Korean on me right here. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
I know what that means. Here we go.
Threw me into the bathtub, had some choice words, and then had the humiliating experience of having to have Mario drive her back to where my car was so she could drive it home. No, that's not what happened?
No. She called me up, still full Korean, not quite yelling at me, but yelling, asking what the heck happened. And I was like, I don't know. He was already kind of, we met and he was already kind of gone. So I just wanted to make sure he got home okay. And then she hung up the phone. And I think she may have called, I don't know, maybe Dean or somebody else to go get the car. You guys were kind of living close to where we were.
Yeah. We're on Bingham Street there.
Yeah. So she may have even walked. I don't know. But after that, I don't know. I was praying that you were alive a few days later.
I'm surprised.
Not from the alcohol, but from Kareen's head.
From Kareen, no, absolutely. I'm surprised that I woke up alive every day during that period. I'm surprised she didn't kill me. And that's just to say, I was hiding my drinking up to this. So this was the first time that she was like, "What is going on?" So this was like out of left field. Right. And because I hadn't repaired the damage that I had done or the trust that I had broken when I came clean about being on the opiates, this just kind of deepened it. But again, what do I do? So she's mad at me. My body is basically going through some crazy stuff. I had to admit I thought I was having a heart attack the next day. So this is where Kareen was at. She was like, basically, she's like this. I'm like, I can't breathe. My heart's beating weird. She just looks at me. She goes, "Then drive yourself to the hospital because I'm done." So I drove myself to Queens. They admitted me to the hospital for a day to run all of these different tests, right? And they kept on asking like, "So are you drinking or taking anything?" I'm like, "No, I don't know what's happened," right? So if I would have told them what I was actually doing, they probably would have been able to diagnose it a little bit better, right? So that was not the first red flag, but for me, that was like okay, if you don't realize this is a problem, Aaron, and how you're damaging your marriage, and what do you think your kids are thinking as you're being dragged across the living room and throwing up and thrown into a bathtub? Like, how do you repair that, right? So I just ignored everything. I was able to convince Kareen that it was a one-time thing. A friend of mine was going through a really hard time on the mainland. He had this like gnarly cancer. They didn't think he was going to live. this brought up all of these different emotions of like, why him, not me? He's a better person than I am. I don't have any value or worth again. And that's what it always comes down to. It comes down to these root problems that we have in our lives that we have to address. And it shouldn't get to a point where my marriage is falling apart. My kids don't like me. Heck, my life was the country music song. Even my dog didn't want to be around me. That's how bad it got, right? And it only got worse from there. So from that point until 2018, again, still doing ministry, still performing at work, convinced Corinne that it was a one-time thing, won't happen again. And I'm continually having all of these things happening. I basically passed out and fell on my face in the middle of the street one day with Corinne. We're getting ready to go to this big party. People thought I was having a stroke. So they brought me to the ER, right? Doctor comes in and looks at Corinne, looks at me and goes, I'm just like, say whatever you got to say, right? Says whatever my blood alcohol level was. And I'm like, I haven't been drinking. And Corinne's like, he's been with me all day, because she didn't know that I had bottles stashed all over the house, at that point, all over the backyard, and that I was drinking just this much, right? And I have to tell you, I was doing daily life stuff. I was not just working, but I was like driving my kids to school. I was picking them up from school. I was going and doing things. It was ridiculous. Like this should not have been happening. And it just got worse from there. And where it came to, because I want to get to this side of recovery, right? So it came to a point where, again, working with a different ministry organization, my wife basically can't stand to be around me. I am being verbally abusive to my wife because we get into these huge arguments. Because I was basically at this point, 2017, 2018, blackout drunk every single day. So I'd get up, I'd have some drinks, so I could actually get through the day, go do all the ministry stuff we needed to do. We were running a school, doing all this kind of stuff. School was thriving, our staff was thriving, the students were thriving, everything was moving forward. So I'm like, this is fine. We get into it. My wife and I had basically become roommates. She couldn't stand to be around me. I get to a point where at some point I would be just blackout drunk, and we'd get into these huge arguments, like yelling, screaming at one another. And I remember when I got back from treatment, she was like, Aaron, do you realize that you were so verbally abusive? And that just hurt my heart. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, Aaron, like you were gaslighting me because you were telling me you weren't drinking. I was stealing money from my kids so I could go buy alcohol. This is how bad that it got. I was stealing money that we had lying around the house. And Corinne's like, what happened to this 20? I'm like, oh, you probably miscounted. So I'm taking all of these issues and all of these lies that I'm actually doing, and I'm putting it on her and saying, no, it's you. Like you miscounted her. No, you misunderstood that. So I would like, she literally thought, and I'm not exaggerating, she thought that she was going crazy as we got into 2017, 2018, because I had convinced her that it was her, not me. How horrible is that? But that's, again, what not just addiction does to you, but anything in your life that's going to come between you and your relationship with your wife, that's what it's going to, we are going to be, and I was definitely, it was all about self-preservation for Aaron, right? I was roommates with my kids and my wife. I would spend as much time as I could away from them, isolating myself. It got into a point where it was so horrible that when I couldn't get alcohol, I would actually go into my bathroom, and I have one of those fancy old, you put the actual razor blades in the thing, in the shaver, right? I would actually take those razors and I would actually cut my arm all the way up, or I'd cut myself under here, or I'd cut myself on my hip, right? Because there's an endorphin rush when you do that. And what I could do though mentally is I could begin to fixate on making sure that nobody saw the cuts on my arm or anywhere else. So I could actually get emotional and mental energy spent by hyper focusing on hiding that when I couldn't get alcohol. It's just a weird, messed up, insane thing.
Wow.
It all came crashing down, and like I said, I want to get to the positives of how do you rebuild the relationship. Is Corinne had found out that I was drinking. She didn't say anything to me. And I was driving home from somewhere, and again, the Lord speaks to me, and I'm just driving, and he simply says, Aaron, you know that it's all going to come crashing down. Just like that, in this gentle, loving voice. And I just went, yeah. And he goes, okay, good. And that was it. The next day, she confronts me. She says, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. She goes, Aaron, I know something's going on. What's going on? And she wanted me to admit it. She wanted me to what I'll say it this way, to actually man up, humble out, and actually admit that I've been lying, cheating, not cheating on her. That's, you guys know what I mean. Just cheating people out of whatever, and stealing and hiding this stuff from her. And I wouldn't do it. I just went, I don't know. And she just walked up and she just went, you're a liar, and just walked out. She goes, we're going to church. You want to go? I'm like, nope. I knew it was up. I knew that she knew, even though she didn't admit it. So I'm like, I'm having one last go here. So they went to church. I went and got booze, got drunk, ended up texting her. Yes, you're right. I've been drinking, blah, blah, blah. So that was in 2018. And it was February of 2018. And so it took from February until Memorial Day for me to actually get to a point where I said, okay, I need help. And at that point, then it was like, I was still drinking and I was still hiding it. But Corinne really didn't care at this point because she's like over it. And she even said to my face, she's like, listen, if you don't pull your head out of your Akole, I'm gone. She's, I'm not going to divorce you, but I'm taking the kids and I'm gone because I will not live like this. Right. That still didn't faze me. I was still like, I can fix this. I got this. I can fix this. So I ended up going to treatment on the mainland, and what got me sober was not just the fact that my wife didn't want anything to do with me, that my kids didn't know how to relate to me, that I had now had to step out of another ministry position because I was not fit to lead anybody. I couldn't even lead myself. What got to me was when I got to treatment, the Lord challenged me again. He goes, okay, Aaron, so what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to go to this treatment. It's like, well, who are you going to be? Are you going to be Aaron, Pastor Aaron, who's always on? Or are you going to be like, are you going to be yourself? Are you going to humble up, be the broken human being that you are, and actually get help? And the first person that the Lord connected me with, literally 5 minutes after stepping into treatment, was a pastor from the south side of Chicago, this little skinny haole guy, who had been in there, I think, already for like 15 or 20 days. So he was my buddy. They buddy you up with somebody. So right away, the Lord says, hey, I've got you on this. And I was able to admit to this guy, like, hey, I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor. And he's like, dude, don't worry, man, God's got this. We're going to be good, right? And I made the conscious choice that I had to get help. I had to get healthy. And I had to actually be who I was, a broken individual who needed help and desperately needed to reconnect with Christ. And that's what happened. This wasn't a Christian organization that I went to. This was just a 12-step rehab program. But the Lord challenged me and met me there and didn't allow me to be lying or performing or anything. So when I got back, I felt like I had been born again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I had to do to repair this, right? So just so you know, so my wife doesn't trust me. She doesn't really like me. She would say like, I love you, but I really don't like you. And I don't want to spend any time with you. My kids really, I really believe the Lord protected them during that time where they knew that things were off, but they definitely didn't know how bad it was going and the other things that were happening. And I had to humble out and I had to come back and I had to begin to not just apologize to my wife, to Corinne. I had to actually ask for forgiveness. And I remember sitting in our bed when I first got back and saying to her, like, listen, you know what? There's no way that I can repair or pay back for the years that basically I've stolen. There's no way I can repair that damage. I can't fix anything that I've done. And that was key for me because if I would have tried to fix the things that I did, I would have gone back into performance mentality and I would have gone back into just doing whatever would please Corinne, right? And then I would have ended up in the same place again. Maybe I wouldn't be drinking or using anymore, but I would still end up in the same place of hiding my heart from Corinne, hiding my heart from the Lord, and not being fully present. So I had to, at that point, in shame and in guilt, I had to be present for Corinne, and I had to basically listen to whatever she had to say. I could not try to defend myself. I could not try to self-preserve. I could not try to say, well, no, don't you understand that like addiction is a disease and all that? That's not going to fly, right? And what I had to do was repair that broken trust by beginning to actually be the man that she married 20 some years ago. And that was boundaries, accountability, and realizing that in those moments, it's not about power and control. It's about repairing a relationship. And I think as men, we struggle for power and control in our marriages and in our families sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We do. Like we want, I want to make the decisions, or, or I want to make sure that we're doing this and trying to be a leader. And we have this warped sense of what it means to be a leader in a family. We have a warped sense of what does it mean to lead your wife or to lead your kids. To lead them means that, guess what? You have a right view of who you are in Christ. And it means you are coming under and you are supporting them so that they are loved, they are cherished, they feel safe, that they feel like they can rely on you for anything. That's where it begins. That's the foundation of leadership in marriage. And I think that as men, sometimes we want to perform, or we want to say, hey, look at my accolades. Look what I've done for this family. That doesn't matter. Jesus does not care how much money you're making. Jesus does not care if you have answers for everything. He's looking at us and he's saying, are you loving your wife? Are you sacrificing yourself in a healthy, positive way so that your wife is thriving, right? Which again, brings me back to the point of, we're just finishing up a really great argument. So I have to learn from my mistakes, and I have to say, doesn't matter if I'm right in this argument or not. My wife's heart is hurting. I didn't approach the situation in the right way. I've got to do what? I've got to humble out. If I need to apologize, I need to apologize. If I need to ask for forgiveness, I need to do that. And I need to shut up and listen. And I can say that because she can't hear what I'm saying. But I can say that because that's the truth, right? And this is the other thing. The things that we invest in our family, both the positive and the negative, are going to come to fruition sometimes years later. So June 12th, I'll be 4 years sober. So I don't have it wired. I'm still new. I say that I am recovered because I've recovered my life back to a degree that I never thought I would. I recovered my marriage. I recovered my family, being a father. So I have those things back, and in a more precious way than I ever thought I could. But it's not easy. So all of those times of me lying and stealing and gaslighting Kareem, when we get into arguments, I can say a phrase that I said years ago, and it'll trigger her. And so she emotionally and mentally reacts like she did 4, 5, 6 years ago. I did that. I caused that. So I have to allow her to process through that. And Aaron has to find a different way to approach that conversation. And I'm learning, probably a little bit too slow for some people, but I'm learning that it's not about being right. It's making sure that Kareem, as my bride, feels heard, loved, safe, and secure. I don't have all the answers. I'm not always the problem, but I know that I can simply be there for her in those moments. And that's something that even when I wasn't drinking and using for those 17 years, that's still something that I didn't understand until I went through what I went through, to understand what it means to be a husband and a father and to actually be there for your family.
I probably have too many questions. Is there anything you want to talk about, Eric, or do you want to clarify or ask?
A bajillion questions.
Go for it. Why don't you go ahead? You go ahead.
As I'm listening to your story, like the way I try to comprehend someone's life is I always try to see it like on this timeline, right? Of you started in 2011 and then we're here today in 2022. And it's been about 11 years since this entire journey of walking through active addiction into restoration. I guess I have a lot of clarifying questions of how you were dealing with certain things in those certain seasons. So one of the questions I had was, first of all, man, it's such a powerful testament that you're standing on your 2 feet, living the life that you have. And wow. I think one of the things that I see a lot of men doing, and I think that I do, is, you know, I think you were, as you were going through this, there was a lot of blatant lying, right?
Yeah.
Something that you're going through. There's just like there's lies here and there, and it's funny. Something that I personally, I don't want to say I don't struggle with, because that's weird. I don't believe that to be true, but like I don't have a like I feel like I'm naturally very transparent, but I think
Eric's a
the person
terrible
that,
liar.
but I'm a very bad liar. Yeah,
That's a great quality to have.
But the but in that is that I feel like I'm very good at lying to myself.
Yes.
Right. So I will lie to myself about what my reality is, or a certain situation is, but then I won't really lie to others about it. I know that ties into a couple of things, but so there's a couple of things that ties into. The first thing is I hear a lot of, there's this theme of you working, and you are working so hard and having this performance-based relationship with Jesus. It almost sounds like you are trying to earn your salvation in some ways.
Right.
Where it's funny, because I'm sure in those 8 years that you're pastoring under this opiate addiction, you probably preach stuff on how you can't earn your salvation.
Yes.
I'm trying to process that paradigm of what was that? How did that feel? Like, did it just feel like you were just living a lie?
Yeah. That's a great question, Eric. And I think, if I look back and remember the moments, especially in that, I wouldn't say that I was like even saying like, I have to earn my salvation. I would say it was more like, I had a warped view of who I was as a born again Christian and as, a child of God. Right. And it was more like, wow, I had so much in my life that I had wasted during my teenage years and my early 20s that I wanted to make the most of the time. And if I think about it, I wasn't actively saying that, I have to earn this back. I have to earn this. Mm-hmm. It was almost, and I think there's a little nuance in this. I think it was more like, I've been given a second chance at life. Like I'm on like chance 4 at this point, right? But at this point, like I've been given a second chance at life. So I need to make sure that I'm being productive and I'm doing things, for Jesus, right? And I don't think I was conscious that I was like almost in a sense trying to pay back what Jesus did, right? But again, that's the root of that was really, it goes back to, and this is so cliche, right? It all goes back to childhood trauma, right? Okay, so when you're 6 years old, this is what happened. And I'm just like, I used to go like, please, not everything is that. I'm like, wow, a lot of things are that for me anyways. But because I believed the lies that my stepmom told about me, that I was worthless, I was never going to amount to anything, that you're a bad influence on people. Not only did I believe that, I agreed with it in my heart. Mm-hmm. Like I said, okay, yeah, that's who I am, then that's who I'm going to be. And I didn't allow the Lord to release me from that until 2018, even before I went into treatment. That held me captive. That was a bondage in my life, in my heart, and in my mind that I couldn't see. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, yes, absolutely. And then for you, like as you're doing church, and you're like this iconic person in your community. How was your church dealing with you as you were going through all this?
Okay, so when it was the opioid addiction. They were amazing. Like once everybody kind of knew that something was off. I mean, I looked like I was skeletal. It was awful. I wasn't the robust in shape man you see before you today. But everybody thought it was because of the stress of Kareem going through cancer treatment and all this stuff. But once I asked for help, they surrounded me and said, whatever you need, we got you. Right. So that was absolutely amazing. In that time, I do wish though, and I don't fault anybody for this, but I do wish somebody would have come up to me and sat me down and just said, what, Aaron, something is off. There were times I was in staff meetings where I literally was just trying to stay actually vertical and not just pass out. Right. And I'm like, I could not have looked like I had it together. I know I'm weird looking, but I'm sorry. So I kind of wished that somebody would have just pulled me aside and said,
Yeah.
Something seems really off here. Like, what's going on? And that's my
Yeah.
encouragement to people. If anybody is watching this and listening to this, and you know somebody, whether it's active addiction or just something in their life is off,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to sit them down and ask them.
Yeah.
Because I probably would have said everything is okay.
Yeah.
But I believe things would have begun to crack, right? It wouldn't have happened until I was ready to get clean. So just plain and simple.
Yeah.
You're not going to force somebody into that.
Yeah. I asked that because, and I don't want to get too, I don't want to I don't want to get into church politics at all, because that's not what this conversation is about. But
Right.
I'm curious because I literally just watched Hillsong Exposed, and I don't know if you've heard of it. Have you heard of it?
Yep. Yep.
Mara, you heard of it? So I just watched it. It's like this 3-episode series on Discovery, and it gutted me. Like it fully, like I haven't fully digested everything I watched yet. I knew the Carl Lentz situation was happening, but then now like Hillsong is going through this like crumbling right now. But the reason why I bring this up is because when I found out about Carl Lentz, it was 2 days after I'd finished reading Own the Moment for the second time. And that book was such a powerful movement in my life. Like I feel like it was like God brought that into my life in a season where I really needed it. And it was amazing. And then I find this out and I'm like, oh, my immediate thought was he lying this whole time? Like, is everything that he's saying a lie? But it can't be, because it did this work in my heart. Right. And I'm curious because as you're going through this, I know that you're doing performance-based thing. You're ministering to people, and you're doing the work, like you're doing the work of the Lord through the church. But it's like, it reminds me, it's almost like this Carl parallel where it's different. You're hiding something differently. He's hiding something differently.
Right.
And how, like, as you're going through that and you're wrestling with that, like, how did you, there's your people that are around you, and it's like, just like you said, I wish someone had said something. And it always kind of blows my mind that people can get by in communities and just not get checked.
Yeah.
And someone in your position too, like someone in your position, someone in Carl's position. Yeah. And it leads to this question, was like, how alone did you feel for those years?
Oh my gosh. I felt more towards the end, like, I felt like it was just me on a little island. So, and I realize we live in Hawaii, but this is not a literal thing, on an island surrounded by water. And I could see life happening, but I couldn't get to it. I used to have this hammock in my backyard. And what I would do every night is I'd find one of the bottles that I hid, right? And I had some, again, my addict's mind. I had some great hiding places. I'm just saying, I had some really great hiding places. And I would go and I'd put music on, and I would sit in this hammock and I would cocoon myself where I could just see through the slit at the top of the hammock. And I would look up and I would see up in my house, the lights were on. I could see and hear my family laughing together and doing life together. And it makes my heart ache even right now, because I was like, I'm not a part of that. Like, that's how alone I felt, just cocooned away from where life is, being able to see life happening, but having no idea how to get to where that life is. And it's so isolating, right? And again, if you know somebody who's an addict, nobody has a dimmer view of their lives than addicts do of themselves. Nobody can hate an addict more than an addict hates themselves. At least I know I couldn't, right? And here was the transition is, how did ministry happen during all that time? Because it's not about me, it's about God. It's about the power of the Holy Spirit and the gifts he's given me. So I can be totally jacked up, and I can be doing ministry because it's not me. I'm simply being, in a sense, a vessel for what God needs to do, because God cares just as much, if not more, about this person over here that I need to minister to as I'm dealing with my crowd. And God's saying, it's like the disciples in chapter 4 of Mark. He brings them through a gnarly storm to meet this demoniac, right? This crazy naked demoniac who's living where death is. And the disciples had to go through their stuff in order to get to this place where this person would be set free, right? God's taking care of the disciples in the midst of the storm, just as he was taking care of me. Why? Because there's people that need the Lord's love. And if in the moment, if I'm that person that has to bring it, he's going to say, despite your failings, despite that you're so jacked up, I still need you to express my love to this individual. And that's why it happens. But when you have a performance mentality, you're just like, well, I rocked that one, didn't I? That was all me, right? And Jesus is just like, really? Really? Okay, well, we'll continue on, right? And this is why I had the opportunity to share my story in a lot of different venues, high schools and all this kind of stuff. But the Lord really put on my heart to begin speaking to the church, to the body of Christ, right? About this, because we can be enablers of our pastors. And if we're going to them only for what they can give us, I think we should have a heart check. Am I there on Sunday because the preaching is great or the worship's awesome? Or am I there on Sunday because I have an opportunity to worship God, right? And I'll tell you, I'm still not there. I still was like, well, I don't know, this preacher's not the greatest, but I guess we got to go to church, right? I'm like, no, I got to turn off that mentality, right? But again, what does the Bible tell us? Moses was a murderer. David was an adulterer. Peter had his foot in his mouth. Every other verse, right? He was called Satan by Jesus because he had the things of man on his heart and mind and not the things of God. So we're in pretty good company as we're jacked up. But the good part is they were able to step deeper into that relationship with Christ, do what they needed to do in order to get back to where God wanted them. And that's what we have to do. So even with all of these pastors and all of these things that are happening in our church world, are we going to sit in judgment or are we going to give grace with accountability? Because that's what changed me. One of the reasons literally that I'm still alive, it goes back to Mario being there for me that whole time. Then when that's the second part of it happened, I was going to a little house church called The Living Room. And my friend Dean literally walked through these things with me, like on a daily basis. Like when it finally came out that I was drinking, he took a whole day to help me try to find a treatment center here on island. I tried it. It didn't work. I wasn't ready to get sober, but he drove with me to the thing to try and get me to fill the paperwork out. He made phone calls for me. When I woke up one morning and he's like, hey, meet me for coffee. So I go and meet him for coffee and he goes, okay, so Aaron, you're not going home today. You're actually going to come and stay at my house for a couple of days because you just really need to not be around Kareem. Everything had come out, we're trying to process how I'm going to get sober, how I'm going to repair my marriage. And I was like, oh, okay. So he was not only willing to hold me accountable, but he was willing to intercede and kind of say, listen, you need to not be around your family because you're not healthy right now. They need a break from you. You can sleep on my couch. Like this guy has 7 kids now. I'm just saying, it's not like, it was like I was moving into the Brady Bunch or something. I don't know, whatever. And he just said, here's the rules. Can't drink, can't call, text, or talk to Kareem. And if you can do that, you can sleep on my couch for a couple of nights. Then we'll set up a meeting where you can sit and connect with your wife, right? So there's grace and love there. There's provision. There's accountability. So of course I lasted one night because that night he went to work. I got something to drink. I came back. I called Kareem and did not go well. Freaked out Dean because he'd never seen me in that. He'd heard me on the phone in arguments because Kareem would call Dean while I'm in the midst of this raging, yelling, screaming fit. And I mean, he got to the point where he basically said towards the end, he's like, Kareem, you know what? Don't call me anymore. If this happens again, just call 911 because if that's what it takes to get him help, then you're going to call the police, right? I didn't learn that till after I got sober. I was like, oh my gosh, like you guys, they're like, Aaron, you have no idea how to control you. So my whole point is this, is that when I did drink, call Kareem, he said the next morning, he's like getting up for work. He's like, okay, great. Let's get some coffee and you're going to have to find a different place to stay tonight because you broke the rules and you're not going home. You're not staying here. So you're either sleeping in your car or you're finding someplace else to stay tonight. But the whole time he did this, he's like, we love you. We're here to support you. We're not going to enable you. If you can't play by the rules, then you're going to suffer the consequences. And I was like, oh my gosh, I knew that he loved me and had my best intention in mind and the best intention for my family. And like, that was one of the deepest lessons I've ever learned. And I'm like, that's what grace is. Because that's what Jesus does in our lives. Forgiveness, grace, mercy, love, accountability. You have to change not just your behavior, but your heart attitude. And Dean modeled that for me.
So good. I want to just kind of like pull everything together a little bit, but before we have some like 5 questions that we ask everybody at the end, just some fun, quick shotgun stuff. But I would love to like have you just kind of maybe wrap everything up for us, as far as if someone is out there and they're dealing with addiction in any way, shape, or form, and they're in the midst of it, and maybe nobody knows, right? Maybe they're getting away with it right now. Can you give us just a top 3 things that they need to kind of do or think about or start to do in order to get healthy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing to realize is that nobody's going to get you out of your addiction. You have to do that yourself. And that begins with admitting that you have a problem, right? And again, we know when we have issues. We know when something is unhealthy in our life, right? So if you are spending so much time and energy to try and just get back to good, again, and there's so many addictions these days and there's so many things, right? But I mean, if you're trying to just get back to good, you have a problem, right? You don't have to hit rock. Your life doesn't have to fall apart. You don't have to almost die. You don't have to be hospitalized. You don't have to lose your family. That doesn't need to be the wake-up call for you to get help. If you are struggling with anything and you know it, don't believe the lie and don't give in to the fear that this is going to ruin my relationship, my marriage, my family, my job. Because if you don't get help, that's going to ruin your relationships, your marriage, your family, and your job. So it's basically just humbling out. Invite one person, invite one trusted friend into the chaos of your life, the chaos of your mind, the chaos of your heart, and just admit, I need help in this. And trust that the Lord is going to work those things out. The second, I think, would be, depending on what the addiction is, like you need to find professional help. Just plain and simple. You're not going to just talk this out with your pastor, right? I mean, there's no way I would have sat down with just Dean and said like, yeah, let's just kind of like psychoanalyze what's going on and just give it to the Lord. Like there was some of that, but I needed to step into a professional counseling relationship where I knew it was totally safe and secure. And this person who does this for a living knows how to help me understand my disease, understand my behavior, and then challenges me and gives me tools to actually step out of that office and begin to living it out. So those would be the top 2 things that I need is you're not alone, invite somebody in and get professional help. And it's scary as heck. It is the scariest thing in maybe in your life that you'll ever do. But what are your alternatives? Lose everybody and die? I don't think those are alternatives.
Man, this is like so heavy, so good though. I think it's also just obviously a testament to the Lord constantly pursuing our hearts, right?
Yes.
Which because it's like, we're not as alone as we feel. It's just a tactic of the enemy, right?
That's huge. That's right? Huge. Yeah.
And it is. It's just a tactic of the enemy to make us believe that we're alone when we're literally still sitting in the palm of the Lord, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm telling you, like I that cannot be overstated enough, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, and I'll just speak to what my own addictions were, like for drug and alcohol. That's the most isolating thing I've ever experienced in my life, right? And I mean, I referenced it before. So Mark chapter 5, the demoniac, like that was me. I was living isolated from everybody. I was hurting myself. I had no resources. Nobody knew what to do with me. The only one that could set me free was Jesus, right? And I had to do what? I had to do it demoniac. I had to run to the feet of Christ and throw myself down, because at that moment, when your addiction is the worst, when you feel the most isolated, Jesus is right there. And you are never closer to freedom than in that moment. And all you have to do is just say, really help me. Now you have to do a crap load of work after that, but that surrendering piece, God's never going to turn your back on you. He's never going to turn his back on you. He's always going to love you. But guess what? You're going to have to do the work to repair relationships. Grace of God's going to be with you. You're going to have to do the work to get your life back on track. The love of God is going to motivate you and surround you. That's the truth of the God that we serve, because our God is a God of restoration, right? Of redemption. And that's what my story shows. I got sober, not simply because I made choices, but because God divinely intervened. And I wish we had more time, because literally, miracle how I got into treatment. Literally, that I was at a point where I was visually and auditorily hallucinating because I was drinking so much. I told that to my doctor after I got sober, and she's like, why didn't you tell me this? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, Aaron, you were close to dying. That's your brain basically beginning to shut down. I'm like, oh, okay. Ask for the help, because the consequences and the repair that's going to come when you ask for help is far more beneficial than isolating yourself and losing everything.
So good, man. I wish we did have more time. We're gonna wrap this up with our shotgun questions. Thanks for coming on and just sharing your story, man, and just kind of like
thank you
being vulnerable here with us. So we have 5 questions that we just kind of wrap through. We concentrate on 5 pillars, obviously spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, and financial. So we just ask people these questions. So number 1, I'll start with body, since you're a specimen. You're a specimen. How do you train your body, or do you train your body, or what is your physical practice right now?
Okay, so this is crazy. So the last time I saw you, I was literally about 25 pounds heavier. So I went from I eat right. And Mario's going to laugh because he knows I haven't had a Coca-Cola in over 200 days.
Wow. That's amazing.
I'm on day 187 of eating healthy.
Oh, love
I went from 157.8 pounds. I'm down to now 135.8 pounds, maybe 136, right? But it's healthy. I eat salads.
Salads?
I eat lean proteins.
Wow.
Don't do sodas. Don't do candy. I have healthy snacks. And once my taste buds adjusted, it actually tastes pretty good. I tried exercising before. No. So I'm like, you know what? I just eating healthy, decaf coffee. I have 1 caffeinated cup of coffee in the morning. The rest is decaf.
Wow.
So, and plenty of water. I'm so funny. I can actually say I'm really doing this. I'm not like BSing you. Like, this is actually my daily eating routine. Like,
love it
every day.
Love it.
So I can't tell you how crazily different this is than his normal lifestyle.
Yeah.
But
really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just eating poke and spam musubi every day.
That's what Eric would be eating all day.
I would be eating
poke bowl all day.
All day. I would eat poke every single day for sure. Cool, man. How do you take care of your heart or your emotions?
Okay, so that's a great question, especially for guys. I think because we are the ones who really want to guard our hearts, right? Because if we're open and honest and transparent, that's weakness, right? And I think that's just a mindset that we have. I don't know if it's all men, maybe it's just me, but so I guard my heart by making sure that, and this actually goes back to the 12-step program. There's this, I think it's the 10th step, which is you take daily inventory. So some point during the day, I make sure, are there any resentments that I have? Are there any lies that I've told? Am I connecting with God and with another human being, right? And I go through that list. And if something's off, I don't always get back on track right away, but I do my best to get back on track, right? Especially when it comes to my relationship with my wife and with my kids. So that's really how I take care of my heart is really allowing myself, one, to receive the love of Christ. And that sounds so churchy, but I'm telling you, all those years I was isolated, I was like, yeah, God loves me, but I didn't receive it. I'm in receive mode now, right? And making sure that, again, any bitterness or resentment that I have, I take care of it in some way, shape, or form. If I can't fix it, I give it to God. If I can fix it, I take the steps to actually repair whatever needs to be repaired. That keeps my heart, I guess, open, and it keeps my emotions really from overwhelming me.
That's something that we don't really hear too much is the action part of that is, knowing it, recognizing it, but then it's the extra part. And it's kind of like a theme throughout what our talk was today, is like the extra part of after recognition, after acknowledgement, it's the action, right? Yeah. It's like, I know this, but if I don't do anything with it, then it's negligence almost, right? And I'm lying to myself again. So, all right. How do you take care of your mind?
Well, that's a great question. That's the one thing I think that I'm just honestly getting back into the rhythm of doing, right? Because I used to read. I mean, I was a voracious reader, right? And with the ADHD, I'd be reading like 2 or 3 different books at one time. One of the things in recovery that's been very difficult is actually recovering my mind. Like I ran a biblical study school for 6 years. I've taught on almost every book in the Bible. I know all the historical background for all this stuff. I literally forgot all of that. I'm not joking. Like I was at a Bible study once and I was like, someone's like, hey, Aaron, when did this happen? And I went, I don't know. I have no idea. So what I do now is I do reading, but I just do it. I really do it in small portions, right? And I try to digest what I can digest. And I'm probably at 90% back as far as cognitively from all the abuse that I did, where I can actually still my memories come back. I can actually read a book and go, okay, here's some 3 points that I want to take care of and I can do out. But reading is definitely a staple for me. And honestly, spending as little amount of time playing video games or online, because that radically slows my brain down. And I don't know if it's just me or if that's a human thing. I don't know. So I try to stay off a screen as much as possible. I'm not doing a very good job the last few weeks, but I try. And so that's really a big part of it.
That's fascinating. I actually have to schedule in playing video games. Otherwise I will not do it. But I think it's because I am bad at playing, if that makes sense. So it's funny.
I understand what you're saying.
Being on the opposite side of the spectrum. Like yesterday, I told like 2 people, I was like, hey guys, we're going to play tonight. And then I fell asleep. So, and how do you take care of your soul, your spirit?
Yeah. So that's the big one. And it begins really with, I've lost the, I guess, legalistic way of doing quiet times. So I have a reminder on my phone every day that comes up at 9:00. And it says this: Lord, I will step into whatever you have prepared for me today. So that's how it begins. That helps me realize that, you know what? God is in control of the next 24 hours of my life. That whatever situations I'm going to face, he's already got an answer. He's going to give me what I need, or I already have in me what I need to deal with that situation, whether it's at home or at work, doing a podcast, whatever it would be. And then I make sure that I'm spending that time, not just praying for stuff. I still pray for stuff all the time, still waiting on my brand new truck. But anyways, but I'm praying and I'm listening to God. I'm spending moments with the Lord where I'm listening. And here's what's crazy. Like, he says stuff to me, and then I'm diligent to write it down, and obedient, which I used to hate that word. I used to hate the word obedience, right? It's like, I ain't nobody's slave. Well, actually, biblical says you are, but I'm obedient. If there's something I need to do, I need to do. And so again, so that's where it is. It's spending those times and those moments. And even when I go to church, like my wife is an amazing worship leader. She's got just the most incredible voice. I sing like Bob Dylan on a bad day. Okay. So I'm not like, but in those moments of worship at church, or even when Kareen is like playing worship, I take a moment to just rest in that. That feeds my soul, because that takes away the performance mentality of what I'm doing for God and helps me be with God. And that's what feeds our soul.
So good. All right. Last question. How do you take care of your wallet or your finances?
When you don't have any money, it's pretty easy.
That's me. That's me.
There's not a lot. There's not a lot.
The money management is not the problem. It's the acquiring the money to manage is what I say.
No, that's a very interesting question. Simply because, I mean, to be honest, like I am not a great manager of money. What? Big surprise there, hearing my story. What? You can't manage stuff in your life, Aaron? But so in our marriage, this is what we do. And Mario and I were talking before that my daughter, Kayala, wants to become a math teacher, right? So I literally bring basic arithmetic to her so she can do it. That's where I'm at with numbers. So what Kareen and I do now, especially because in this season, the Lord has blessed us with more opportunity, more things to get income. So she handles the books. So she knows when the bills need to be paid. She manages that. But we have a common philosophy and connect on where our finances are at, where they need to be, and how we can spend in that, right? We're actually at a point where I have my son's going to be 20 here pretty soon. And then my daughter's about to turn 18 on Saturday.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah. And then, so they actually are now in the world where I had family members that actually put money aside for them for their college and for their living. So I'm learning how to be more financially secure as I walk with those two, and how to manage their money for school and for life, and where they can spend it. So I'm kind of in process of learning how to be more financially secure, right? But basically, I try not to impulsively buy. I try not to impulsively spend. I try to keep to the budget that Kareen and I actually work at. And we're honestly, because we kind of live paycheck to paycheck, our budget is kind of like month to month. And we're working on learning how to plan out farther and how to set stuff aside, not just for stuff to do, but for a future. Yeah. And if there's anybody out there who's like, I don't understand it, learn it now, especially if like I'm 52. So I wish that I would have had even a close philosophy of finances back in my 20s. And if you can start now, just start. It's never too late. We're starting and changing things up, but it's like learning stuff and then keeping to what you actually set. If you set a budget, then stick to the budget. Even if this great thing is on Amazon on sale, even if there's a great sale over here, just say no. It's going to come around again. It's just stuff.
Good.
Love it.
Oh man, this is so rich. Thank you so much, Aaron. Appreciate you for coming on. Is there anything that you would like to say as a final point?
I think the biggest thing that I want to say to people is, you can't live a lie. I mean, just in relation to my story, and that there's nothing that you can do to make Jesus love you more or less. And we're in the Easter season right now, right? Like that. The reason we celebrate Easter is because we're celebrating how much God loves us, values you, regardless of what you've done, regardless of what you're doing, good or bad, regardless of what you're going to do. Jesus loves you so much that he died for you. And we have access to that love on a daily basis. So just access it. It's not about performing. It's not about doing the right thing. It's receiving it. Realize it, receive it, and guess what? It's going to translate into your relationships and into every other aspect of your life. Not perfectly, but progressing.
Love it, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. And,
hey, thank you, guys. Great to meet you, Eric. Always good to see you, Mario.
Brother.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. For more content, you can find us on Instagram at WeTheTrust or at WeTheTrust.com. If you'd like to connect further with Eric, you can find him on Instagram at Coach Eric Freedom. And if you'd like to connect further with me, Mario, you can find me on Instagram at the Mario Quesada. We'll see you next time.